Okay, so here we are hitting part two of our intro to animals, and really today's discussion is about development. All right, that's the big piece of development that we have to figure out, and there's some important parts to it. So that's all today's video lecture is about. So in our question guide, this will take us to number 14. So that's where we are right now. So 14. So it says, what's a zygote? Well, zygote is a fertilized egg, right? It's the product of sperm plus egg equals zygote. So as soon as there's fertilization, you get a zygote, right? It's also the punchline to a very good joke, which is, what do you call a baby goat? Okay, that's a zygote. All right, so in animals, as soon as fertilization happens, you have a zygote. It undergoes a bunch of mitotic cell divisions, right? It starts growing. Well, there's an early identifiable stage in all animals. It is a hollow sphere of cells. It's called a blastula. All right, so this is number 15 in our notes. It's just a hollow ball. You were a hollow ball early in your development. So was your pet, whatever your pet is. Is it a fish? Is it a tarantula? Is it a bearded dragon? It doesn't matter. They all, and you all, were a blastula at some point. So according to what kind of animal you are, there are two pathways that this development post-blastula takes place. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. All right, so that will take us to 16. So usually, you guys are lucky. Usually, I make you draw this out and label stuff, but I'll just have you label things because I'll provide you the drill rings. Here they are, and they're in color. You're welcome. So we have two pathways of development from the blastula. So some animals either follow this protostome development or they follow the other way, which we'll talk about on number 18, called a deuterostome. Proto means first, deutero means second. So keep that in mind. So with a protostome developing, we'll label some of these things in a second. But let me just tell you, 17 says define a protostome. Well, here we are. It means your mouth develops from the blastopore. What is the blastopore? It is the first opening, right? Pore means a hole or opening in the blastula, blastopore, right? So we have like our hollow sphere. There it is. And it starts getting this here. I'll do that. Our hollow sphere gets this little indentation here. There between my thumbs. That's going to become the blastopore. And if that blastopore ends up developing into the mouth, so the opening end of the digestive tract where food goes in, we call that type of development a protostome. All right. So what we're going to do, and this is most invertebrates, right? Creatures without backbones. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the kind of labeled parts here. So early in development, we've got here at the top, we've got 3 tissue layers and then the blastopore illustrated. So in your notes, ectoderm is a tissue layer. We'll define this later, but it corresponds to A in our notes. All right. B is the stuff called mesoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm, and then we have the yellow, which is endoderm. So these are these 3, we'll call them later germ tissue layers. I'll explain that later. And in our notes, D corresponds to the blastopore. So that first opening of our blastula, that little indentation. Now, as that develops, you end up with that little indentation going all the way through. So basically, we have a tunnel going through, and this is the bottom of our 2 illustrations here on this slide. So remember the blastopore developing in the mouth. So that blastopore at the bottom, label F, that is the mouth now, all right, F. F is the mouth, which means the second opening is where food goes out. That's the anus. Okay, so E is the anus. Got it? So it shows the pathway of food through a digestive tract. Okay, so this is early in development. Do you capiche? Okay, that takes care of 16 and 17. Review this again if you need to. Watch this section again. but you're probably okay. Okay, so that contrasts the protostome route of development with that of a deuterostome. Deuterostome means second opening. So if the second opening develops into the mouth, then you're a deuterostome, okay? So, of course, that means the first opening must have been the anus, which is correct to say that. Now you are a deuterostome. All right, I'll talk about this in a bit, but you as a chordate, as an animal with backbone, right, which is a part of chordata, you developed along this pathway that makes you a deuterostome, a deuterostomous pathway of development. There's only one other phylum that is a deuterostome also, and it is, oddly, Echinodermata. So if you remember, or maybe you don't have any idea, but that means that outside of chordata, our closest relatives are starfish. Yeah. So anyways, let's label this. I've got G through L to label these. So we also have the same three germ tissue layers, ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. So that goes G, H, and I in that order. Ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. J is the blastopore. But development is a little bit different this way with the deuterostome, right? So the second opening becomes the mouth. So with the protostome, the first opening becomes the mouth. Deuterostome, the second opening becomes the mouth. So that means the first opening really was the anus, which means you guys were nothing but buttholes early on. Is that okay to say? I was too, so yes. So there it is. There's the similarity in terms of relatedness that chordates, right? We're a member of chordata, and starfish, Echinodermata, are the only two phyla of animals that have a deuterostomous development, which means we're the two most closely related phyla. No, that's not quite what that means. It means that the closest related phylum to chordata is echinoderms. That's what it means. Okay, so let's talk about those germ tissue layers here for a second. So we'll get to 20, but germ means beginning, okay? So the germ tissue layers are the first or beginning initial tissue layers in terms of development of any organism, all right? So we think of germ now as meaning something that causes disease, but that's really from the beginnings of trying to understand what causes disease, right? So what is the cause of disease? Well, we call that idea the germ theory, and now that has evolved to mean that germs are the things that cause disease, even though germ means the beginning of. So anyways, we're talking about germ tissue layers in animals. We've got three: endoderm, and like I mentioned before, ectoderm, and we talked about mesoderm. So here's endoderm. So what I would like you to know for this table for 20 is it is the innermost layer, endo inside, that's easy to remember, derm tissue. Endoderm is the innermost layer. And what does it eventually develop into in animals? The digestive system and the respiratory system, all right? So I'm oversimplifying here, of course, but those are the two major body systems that endoderm develops into. So mesoderm is the middle germ tissue layer. All right, so the mesoderm is middle. And what's it develop into? Well, the big ones to keep in mind here are muscles and circulatory system. There's some other stuff, but the ones I would need you to know, the ones I expect you to know: mesoderm, middle, muscle, along with muscles like the heart, right? So you can remember the cardiovascular system. So in animals, there's circulatory system. All right, so that's mesoderm. And that takes us to ectoderm, the last and outermost layer that is a germ tissue. All right, so it develops as the outermost layer, not surprisingly, into skin, but also plays an important role in our nervous system. So our sense organs, all our nerves, our brainy parts, that's all part of our nervous system, right? So ectoderm develops into that nervous system and our skin. Okay. Okay, I'm going to dip back into my childhood again here for a second and tell you a secret about how I almost got in trouble with the law. So this is one summer. I think I was probably in college even. My good and best friend from high school, John Stankiewicz, in his family is Polish, and I call him Big Stank sometimes. Anyways, Stankiewicz and I, so he got his hands on some fireworks in a big old brown paper bag, and we took them to a remote park at night. It was the summertime, and we took it to a remote park because we didn't want to get in trouble for shooting off fireworks. We also wanted to do it safely, but we also really wanted to do it. So we went to a very remote park at night and started firing off some fireworks. They were not giant fireworks and they weren't super loud. And again, we were in the middle of nowhere, so we thought. Anyway, so we're firing off these fireworks. Oh, we see some headlights approaching. What's that? That is a police officer. And he shows up and we're like, uh-oh, we done got caught. And so the police officer shows up and he's like, hey, we got a report that someone's shooting off fireworks. Do you know anything about that? And we were like, yes, we do. And that was us. And we feel very bad about it. We were very sorry. And he said, okay, appreciate your honesty. I need to search your car. Well, I had been driving my dad's car. Maybe you do or don't know this, but my dad is now retired, but he, for his career, is a Lutheran minister. So he's a pastor. Anyways, the police officer starts going through the car and finds a bunch of my dad's pastor stuff in there, like his collar, like some paperwork, like his briefcase that had a bunch of like churchy stuff in it. And once the cop realized, A, these guys aren't actually causing a lot of problems, and B, we got a pastor situation on our hands. He did tell us to stop doing the firework thing and to not do it again. And he did confiscate our fireworks. And he did let us go with the simple warning. But I am pretty certain it's because my dad's a preacher. And that's why he let us off. So I do feel bad about that. I indirectly used my dad's profession to get me out of trouble. I didn't intentionally do that, but I did accept it. And also, I didn't tell him about that for many, many years, because that seems like the kind of thing I would want to keep from him. Anyways, he does know now. Moral of the story is don't go to parks at night and shoot off fireworks unless your dad is a pastor.